Buried beneath the flames of war, a secret waits, hidden under stone, silence, and the lie of official memory. These were not soldiers, not commanders. They were children. And in the firestorm of Dresden, they vanished into the earth, and came back changed. What they saw, what they survived, was never meant to be remembered. Until now. The winter of 1942 was unforgiving in the far northern forests of Karelia. The snow lay like a suffocating silence over the land, swallowing sound and light alike. In this vast, frozen expanse near the town of Kestenga, where the Soviet-Finnish front simmered in a deadly stalemate, the 432nd Soviet Infantry Regiment vanished without a trace. Over 600 men marched into the timber-choked white wilderness in late November. Not one returned. Official Soviet records note the battalion as lost during engagement, but rumors spread like frostbite among survivors and locals alike. What truly happened to the so-called Kestenga ghosts? This documentary draws from declassified NKVD files, Finnish partisan logs, and the recovered field journal of Lieutenant Mikhail Antonov, the regiment's final voice. Antonov's entries begin methodically, noting supplies, weather, morale. But by December 3rd, his handwriting becomes more erratic. "The wind howls like a woman mourning," he writes. "We are not alone in these woods. Something watches us." The 432nd had been tasked with reinforcing Soviet positions along the Sala Road, threatened by Finnish ski patrols and German Gebirgsjäger units. Command expected only light resistance. But when Antonov's regiment departed their forward outpost near Lake Topozero, radio contact became sporadic, then ceased altogether. Witnesses from a nearby Red Army artillery unit reported seeing black smoke over the pine ridges on December 6th. They assumed it was the 432nd engaged in battle. No cries, no gunfire, just smoke. Then snow fell in thick sheets, erasing all signs. The first search party didn't go out until December 15th. It was a group of reluctant conscripts, mostly youths and veterans of the Winter War, sent with orders to locate survivors or remains. They found discarded rifles frozen into snowbanks, foxholes filled with spent ammunition, and strange, shallow graves, half-covered, as if the dead were buried in a hurry or by someone afraid of being caught. Among the search team was Private Anatoly Varenko, who recounted in a 1973 interview for Pravda's Forgotten Fronts column that the scene felt cursed. "We found a frozen field kitchen, untouched," he said. "No blood, no signs of a struggle. Just abandoned. And then there were the trees. Strips of fabric tied to trunks. Like trail markers. Or warnings." But most unsettling was the discovery of Antonov's field journal, found inside a weather-worn satchel beneath the roots of an overturned tree. The final entry was dated December 11th. "The frost has taken Shapovalov. Fingers black. Men speak in whispers. No one wants the fire lit anymore. Sergeant Dorokov swears he saw men moving through the woods, men not wearing our colors. They didn't speak. They didn't leave tracks." His final words read, "They told us the enemy was in front. But I fear we brought it with us." Finnish partisan records tell a different story. According to the diary of Vilho Luomala, a radio operator for the Finnish Army's 12th Detachment, scouts observed the Soviet regiment for 2 nights. "They moved like ghosts," he wrote. "They didn't set up proper camp, kept marching in loops, as if lost or avoiding something. We didn't engage. They were already breaking." By the second week of December, temperatures had dropped to -40 degrees Celsius. The Soviets were ill-equipped, their winter gear rushed and often mismatched. Rumors began among troops that the 432nd had fallen victim to Pan Filovik's curse, a superstition stemming from a now-debunked tale of a Red Army commander executed for cowardice, whose ghost would lure weak-willed soldiers into the tundra to die. The NKVD, ever wary of morale breakdowns, launched an investigation in 1943. Its findings, sealed until the 1990s, describe possible psychological collapse induced by extreme weather, hunger, and suspected sabotage. The lead investigator, Captain Ilya Zorin, noted the disturbing consistency in survivor statements. Only 3 men were ever recovered alive, in spring 1943. All were frostbitten, delirious, and malnourished. 1. Corporal Denis Yelagin, later died in an asylum outside Arkhangelsk. Before his death, he repeatedly drew a symbol on the walls, a circle with 3 vertical lines crossing through it. Folklorists now believe it resembles an ancient Sami rune meaning, spirit of the dead forest. What role did the Finns play? Finnish officers maintained they never directly engaged the regiment. No battle reports, no claims of prisoners. Instead, some Finnish veterans, particularly among the Karelian Rangers, whispered of a remote glade known as Kuollut Metsä, the dead forest, where even animals refused to tread. According to them, Soviet patrols who wandered there during the Winter War never returned. As for Antonov's journal, historians debate its authenticity. The ink appears to be Soviet issue, but the final pages are smudged with soot and ash, as if written near open flame. One theory posits that the battalion turned on itself. Panic, starvation, perhaps even mutiny. Another suggests an NKVD purge, quietly executed to suppress reports of mass desertion. But what truly cements the legacy of the 432nd is the eerie lack of remains. In 1964, during a hydroelectric project that flooded much of the Kestenga area, engineers unearthed several Soviet helmets and bones, only to halt the excavation abruptly. Local rumors persist that a mass grave was found, then quickly resealed and buried beneath the reservoir. To this day, old men in the region speak of the Yovaeltajat, the night walkers. Figures glimpsed at the edge of forests on blizzard nights. Always silent, always marching. For the families of the missing, closure never came. Their sons, brothers, fathers remain frozen in official ambiguity, listed only as MIA. But Antonov's final words, scratched in a shaking hand across the last page of his journal, offer a chilling epitaph. Snow does not forget. It buries. In 2001, Russian historians erected a small stone marker near the old trail to Kestenga, now overgrown. It reads simply, to the 432nd. May your silence be remembered. In the heart of Nazi-occupied Brittany, 1943, amidst crumbling stone villages and watchful eyes, whispers spread of a phantom voice, one that spoke in static bursts and coded messages from nowhere. To the locals, it was the ghost of the resistance. To the Germans, it was a vexing riddle. But to the Office of Strategic Services, it was Station Echo, an unregistered transmission unit allegedly manned by one man, hidden in the belfry of a ruined church, conducting a rogue intelligence operation against Hitler's war machine. At the center of this murky legend was Captain Raymond Ellis, a Polish-American linguist turned OSS radio technician. Born in Chicago to immigrant parents and fluent in 5 languages, Ellis was known within the OSS as brilliant but insubordinate. Records from 1942 suggest he was pulled from a London coding station after he constructed a false report claiming to have intercepted Goebbels' personal Morse key. As a joke, he later admitted under interrogation. Yet by spring 1943, Ellis resurfaced on the OSS deployment lists. His new assignment was to support resistance cells in Brittany, though the region was considered low priority due to German naval control of the Atlantic ports. However, in May 1943, Allied command began receiving transmissions from a unit signed Echo 7. The origin was traced to Finisterre, a remote area filled with winding coastlines, Celtic folklore, and centuries-old churches. The signals were erratic but laced with real intelligence. Troop movements, supply routes, guard rotations. Then came something more startling. In July, the Allies received coordinates for a German fuel convoy scheduled to pass near the town of Hulgot. Hours later, resistance fighters launched an ambush, destroying 6 trucks and capturing encrypted documents. None of the known OSS teams operating in France claimed responsibility. Station Echo became the ghost in the network. In 1987, a retired British SOE agent, Margaret Ashburn, gave an interview to the Imperial War Museum where she described meeting Ellis briefly during a transfer operation near Quimper. He wore a priest's cassock and smelled like burnt wood, she said. He carried a radio set in a wine crate and said the confession booth had better acoustics for Morse. According to resistance accounts, Ellis embedded himself in the ruins of St. Tronen's Church, a medieval structure shelled during the Luftwaffe's push west. The bell tower still stood, though precariously. From there, he built a transmitter powered by a bicycle dynamo and smuggled radio crystals. Legend holds that he used the organ pipes to bounce Morse code, giving his transmissions a ghostly, resonant tone that earned him the nickname, the Singing Spy. French villagers claimed that when the bells rang during stormy nights, a coded message followed in less than an hour. Some recall miraculous coincidences: a sudden bridge explosion after a whispered prayer, a Gestapo vehicle swerving off the road shortly after locals heard the bells toll thrice. But Echo's most famous act came in October 1943. OSS headquarters in Algiers intercepted a bizarre sequence: 3 minutes of silence, then a message repeated 4 times, ***, Operation Hezekiah compromised. Extract Brevier. At the time, Operation Hezekiah was a classified infiltration mission aimed at rescuing captured RAF pilots near Lorient. How Ellis learned of it remains unclear. The extraction was rushed. When Allied forces stormed the Gestapo safehouse, they found the pilots alive, and the German commander dead from an apparent suicide. This earned Echo the grudging respect of OSS Director William Donovan, who scribbled in a margin note, "Find this madman and give him a medal, or court-martial him." The Germans, meanwhile, began a counterintelligence effort to locate the phantom broadcaster. The Abwehr deployed trucks with radio detection equipment, triangulating signals across the region. Several innocent villagers were arrested or executed. But Ellis, if it was him, always stayed one step ahead. In a December 1943 transmission, intercepted by both sides, Echo taunted, "The wind speaks louder than wire. Try listening to the ghosts next time." By early 1944, the signals ceased. OSS records list Ellis as missing in action, presumed killed. No body was found. No trace of the equipment remained. Yet after the liberation of Brittany, British engineers surveying the area found a charred metal fragment bearing part of an OSS radio unit serial code, half buried beneath rubble in the church bell tower. More intriguing, etched into the stone wall inside the belfry, was a message in Latin, "Vox clamantis in deserto." A voice crying in the wilderness. Post-war investigations never confirmed the full truth. Some argue Station Echo was a team, not a man, an OSS disinformation campaign designed to frighten the Germans and rally resistance morale. Others believe Ellis went rogue, building his own network of partisans outside official channels. The most extreme theory claims he was killed by the OSS to prevent leaks, though no evidence supports this. But traces linger. In Hulgoat, a memorial stone marks the spot of the destroyed convoy. The plaque reads, "To the signal that shattered silence." Locals still gather on stormy nights in the ruins of St. Tronen's, where the wind through broken windows mimics faint tapping, like Morse code echoing from the past. In 2019, a rusted wine crate was discovered during a church renovation. Inside, a set of vacuum tubes, a pair of broken headphones, and a torn photograph of a man in a cassock, smiling beneath a lightning-struck bell tower. In the final days of the Pacific War, as American bombers turned Tokyo into an inferno and whispers of surrender swirled through the Imperial Palace, a quiet figure moved through the city's shadows carrying more than just documents. She carried a nation's secrets. Sachiko Murayama, a 28-year-old linguist and imperial archivist, was given a task that would vanish from official history: protect and, if necessary, destroy the contents of the Kōdōkan vault. For decades, the vault was only a rumor among post-war scholars, a fortified archive hidden beneath a Shinto monastery on the outskirts of Tokyo, allegedly holding Japan's most classified wartime material. Plans for secret weapons, diplomatic correspondences, and evidence of experiments that would rival Unit 731. But no such vault ever appeared in surrender inventories. No American soldier reported discovering it. Yet buried deep within the post-war testimony of a U.S. translator was a single sentence: Asterisk, the woman spoke of a vault beneath the cedar trees. Asterisk. Sachiko was not born into the military or nobility. She was the daughter of a schoolteacher in Osaka and a calligrapher by training. Her gift was language. By 1939, she spoke fluent English, Mandarin, German, and French, and was recruited by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs to work as a translator. But after the attack on Pearl Harbor, she was reassigned to the Kōdōkan project, ostensibly a program to preserve Japanese cultural materials. In truth, it was an elite corps of archivists, cryptographers, and linguists tasked with maintaining the inner circle's most sensitive files. In a rare surviving letter addressed to a cousin in Kyoto, Sachiko wrote, "I no longer know whether I am preserving truth or burying shame. Perhaps both. Every seal I break reveals another face of the war we never speak about." The Kōdōkan vault itself was designed in 1942 under orders from General Tojo. According to declassified architectural blueprints discovered in 1999, the vault was buried 20 meters beneath the Kōdōkan monastery in the Tokyo suburbs. Reinforced with concrete and iron beams, it was shielded against firebombing, and its only entrance was disguised beneath a ceremonial stone lantern. Inside, metal filing cabinets and encrypted lockboxes stored thousands of documents. A select group of 5, including Sachiko, had access. By the summer of 1945, as the Americans prepared for invasion, the order came down. If Japan surrendered, the vault was to be sealed and all contents destroyed. But Sachiko hesitated. In an unpublished memoir written in the 1960s, discovered by her niece in Nagoya, Sachiko recounted what happened in those final days. The air was smoke. The city crumbled like burnt rice paper. We knew it was ending. But I had touched too much truth to set it alight. She gathered a selection of key documents, marked in her notes as the 5 lanterns, and hid them in a separate chamber beneath the main vault, accessible only by crawling through a gap behind a ceremonial drum. Among these were detailed records of pre-war communications with Nazi Germany, letters between Hirohito and military commanders regarding chemical weapons testing in Manchuria, and a coded report hinting at an attempt to negotiate surrender with the Soviets as early as 1943, months before it became public knowledge. The Americans arrived on August 30, 1945. General MacArthur set up headquarters at the Daiichi building. U.S. intelligence immediately began a hunt for Japanese records. The CIC, Counterintelligence Corps, interviewed dozens of clerks, aides, and translators. Sachiko was among them. According to the transcript of her interview, conducted on September 4, 1945, by Lieutenant Harold Brenner, she claimed her post was in a cultural ministry office and had no knowledge of hidden documents. Yet Brenner's personal notes, scribbled in pencil, offer a different story. Asterisk, she hesitated when asked about monasteries. Said, "Too much blood for prayer. Maybe hiding something." Asterisk. In the following weeks, American forces combed through monasteries and shrines across Tokyo. The Kōdōkan site was bombed, its upper structure burned. The subterranean vault, if it existed, was never excavated. What happened to the hidden documents remains a mystery. Some theorize Sachiko passed them to a monk sympathetic to pacifist ideals. Others claim she buried them within the monastery grounds before fleeing to the countryside. Her memoir ends abruptly in 1946. No mention of the vault's fate. Just a closing line, "I became the shadow of a nation that lost its voice." For decades, the story remained a footnote in academic circles. But in 2005, a construction team renovating the Kōdōkan ruins unearthed a rusted filing cabinet beneath a stone lantern. Inside, brittle paper fragments bearing Japanese military seals and an envelope marked K5. Among the fragments, barely legible under soot and age, was a line typed in English: "Do not let the fire consume the truth." The Japanese government refused to comment. Independent historians were denied access to the site. Within weeks, the area was declared a heritage zone and sealed to further digging. Today, Sachiko Murayama is neither honored nor condemned in Japanese history books. Her name appears only once in official records, as a wartime translator. But her story lingers in the academic underground, a quiet rebellion against the sanitized narrative of surrender. She died in 1972 in obscurity. No family, no shrine. Only a small box of calligraphy brushes, an American-made typewriter, and a faded silk envelope labeled Echo of the Vault. In modern Tokyo, Kōdōkan's ruins stand silent. Monks sweep leaves from the stones, tourists take photos of the old lanterns. But in the stillness, some say you can hear the rustle of old paper, of secrets not yet burned, waiting in the dark earth. As the war turned against fascist Italy in 1944, Winston Churchill approved one of the most peculiar and secretive operations ever conceived by British intelligence, a psychological warfare campaign code-named Operation Fireveil. Its objective was not to destroy enemy troops by force, but to unravel them from the inside using fear, illusion, and theater. The operation's heart was in the Alps of northern Italy, where remnants of Mussolini's loyal black-shirt divisions had retreated into the high passes after the collapse of Rome. British and American forces pushed up through the Apennines, but stiff mountain resistance and treacherous terrain stalled progress. Churchill, ever fond of unconventional solutions, greenlit an SOE proposal that combined espionage, sabotage, and stagecraft. Deploy a small group of illusionists, actors, and deception experts into the Italian Alps and convince the fascists that they were being haunted by a supernatural enemy. The team, formally designated SOE Unit 14Z, was led by Major Cecil Ambrose, a former Oxford theatre professor and a veteran of propaganda leaflet campaigns in North Africa. His recruits were drawn from unusual corners: a disgraced stage magician named Albie Fenwick, a London opera set designer, a Scottish ventriloquist with a nervous twitch, and 2 exiled Italian actors who had performed anti-fascist plays before the war. They trained in the Scottish Highlands, learning basic demolitions, radio operations, and alpine survival. But their core training focused on deception, building dummies, rigging sound systems, and simulating troop movements using light and shadow. Their motto, scrawled on the walls of their base: *, illusion breeds hesitation. Hesitation breeds retreat. *. In September 1944, the team parachuted into the Ortler Alps near the town of Bormio, escorted by a small band of Italian partisans. Disguised as German deserters and civilian wanderers, they embedded themselves among the valleys. Within a week, the Fireveil operation was underway. The first target was a black-shirt outpost known as Monte Posto 22. Fireveil agents infiltrated a nearby cave and installed concealed phonograph speakers, powered by hand-cranked batteries. Over 2 nights, they played echoing recordings of distorted German and Italian phrases, mixed with wolf howls, breaking glass, and funeral dirges. On the 3rd night, the commanding officer reported to regional HQ that his men were experiencing signs of alpine madness, and requested immediate reassignment. The post was abandoned within 72 hours. No shots were fired. Encouraged, Ambrose expanded the campaign. Fake mass graves were staged with pig bones and bloodied uniforms, implying that entire German patrols had been slaughtered. Partisan collaborators spread rumors of a white-faced demon brigade that moved without skis, never left tracks, and lit no fires. Witnesses claimed to see glowing figures moving across ridgelines at dusk. These were, in fact, mannequins outfitted with phosphorescent paint, suspended on wire pulleys across mountain paths. A particularly effective trick involved forged German documents planted during staged ambushes, warning of a rogue SS unit executing Wehrmacht officers for defeatism and retreat. The psychological pressure on already fractured Italian and German forces proved significant. By October, intelligence intercepts revealed entire companies refusing to patrol after dark in the valleys around Bormio. One unit, the 84th Blackshirt Battalion, surrendered to advancing British infantry without resistance, leaving behind a message scrawled in charcoal: "We do not fight spirits." The Germans, suspicious of the sudden breakdown, sent their own counterintelligence team. Led by Oberst Hans Keller, a strict and methodical officer, the team sought to debunk the Phantom Army reports. But Keller's notes, captured in late 1945 and archived by MI6, reveal his growing doubts. In one entry, dated November 2nd, he writes, "Our guide has vanished. Tracks disappear mid-snowfield. We are being followed, though I order silence. Their presence is felt, never seen." Though Fireveil remained a closely guarded secret, some accounts leaked to Allied command. General Alexander, overseeing the Italian front, reportedly said, Whatever bloody play they're staging up there, it's working. Churchill, upon reading a report titled The Battle of Shadows, allegedly chuckled and said, "That's the sort of madness I approve of." Despite its success, the operation was terminated in January 1945 when the region was fully secured. The unit was disbanded, and the participants signed non-disclosure agreements under the Official Secrets Act. Post-war, few records of Operation Fireveil survived. Major Ambrose returned to Oxford and published a thinly veiled fictional account titled The Bells of the Dead Ridge. Fenwick the magician disappeared in 1946. Rumors suggest he emigrated to Argentina. The Scottish ventriloquist, Malcolm Dean, opened a puppet theatre in Glasgow and was occasionally asked if his puppets ever spoke Italian. He never answered. In 1974, an Italian shepherd discovered a weathered puppet in the ruins of an old cabin in the Alps. It wore a miniature Wehrmacht uniform and had a note stitched inside, asterisk, "Tell no one. They won't believe you." Asterisk. To this day, Operation Fireveil remains officially unacknowledged. But in the valleys of the Ortler Alps, some old villagers still speak of the phantasmi di Churchill, Churchill's ghosts, who once roamed the mountains with pale faces, silent boots, and the power to make armies vanish. On the night of February 13, 1945, Dresden was reduced to embers. Over 2 days, Allied bombers dropped more than 3,900 tons of explosives and incendiaries on the ancient German city, creating a firestorm that consumed everything. Baroque cathedrals collapsed. Streets melted. Bodies vaporized. And in the chaos, a group of 12 children, some as young as 6, disappeared beneath the flames into the crypts of the Kreuzkirche, emerging days later as living ghosts. The story of these children, known locally as Die Zwölf aus der Asche, the 12 from the ashes, was buried for decades under rubble, guilt, and silence. But in 1995, a diary surfaced in an attic in Leipzig, wrapped in a scorched burlap sack. It belonged to Jacob Richter, a 14-year-old altar boy and one of the 12 survivors. His entries, written in pencil on hymn sheets and ration slips, chronicle a descent into darkness, survival, and the unimaginable aftermath of total war. Jacob's first entry is dated February 13, 1945. "The sky shakes," he writes. "Father Franz tells us to go below. I take Lotte's hand. We run. The church screams." At approximately 10:03 p.m., the first wave of RAF Lancasters released their payloads. Kreuzkirche, one of Dresden's oldest Protestant churches, was hit directly in the nave. The roof collapsed, but the stone crypts beneath remained miraculously intact. Inside, 12 children, some parish orphans, others separated from their families, huddled in pitch darkness with a single lantern and a few broken loaves of bread left by the sacristan. In a later entry, Jacob writes, "We listen for footsteps. None come. Only thunder from above. The lantern is dying. We are beneath a dying world." For 3 days, they remained entombed in silence and smoke. The air grew thin. A 4-year-old boy named Anselm stopped speaking. Lotte, age 11, sang lullabies until her voice gave out. The older children rationed water from a cracked pipe that dripped like tears from the ceiling. Then, on February 16th, the silence cracked. According to Jacob's account, a voice called down through the rubble. A medic from the U.S. Army's 45th Infantry Division, Private Harold Fenn. His patrol had entered the city following the final bombing run, looking for survivors and medical emergencies. He spotted movement in the ash, then heard faint singing beneath the ruins. In Fenn's own field report, later archived at the U.S. National Archives, he wrote, "I thought it was a music box at first. Then I realized it was a hymn. A child's voice. Faint, but steady." Using shovels and hand tools, the soldiers dug through smoldering debris until they reached the collapsed stairwell leading to the crypt. They found the children filthy, coughing, but alive. All 12. One, the youngest, had drawn pictures on the stone wall in charcoal, angels and fire, and a great winged bird carrying them away. The children were taken to a makeshift Allied medical outpost. One died of smoke inhalation 2 days later. The rest recovered. But the war had left them unanchored. Their families were either missing or dead. They were listed as displaced persons and relocated to a Red Cross shelter outside Weimar. What became of them afterward was unclear for decades. Official records were sparse. But Jacob's diary, preserved by a teacher who took him in after the war, provides glimpses. He describes Lotte disappearing in 1946, possibly adopted by a Swedish couple. 2 others, Otto and Clara, were sent to East Berlin and never heard from again. Jacob himself became a school janitor in Leipzig, living quietly until his death in 1994. His diary was discovered by his landlord during a routine apartment clearance. The entries offer haunting reflections on guilt, survival, and the loss of innocence. In one passage he writes, "We were born again beneath the earth, but we were not the same. The fire changed the shape of our souls." The most striking element of Jacob's journal is his recurring dream, which he recorded dozens of times, a vision of the church fully restored, standing in perfect silence, the 12 children seated in the pews like statues. A figure in white enters and plays the organ. No one speaks. Then one by one, they disappear. This imagery caught the attention of post-war trauma researchers in Germany, who analyzed the diary in the early 2000s. Some viewed it as evidence of collective survivor guilt. Others believed the dreams pointed to deeper, unprocessed psychological trauma from witnessing mass civilian death at a formative age. But not everyone forgot. In 2015, a memorial was quietly installed in the restored Kreuzkirche crypt, a small brass plaque with 12 names, 11 confirmed and 1 listed only as Das Kind der Asche, the child of ash. Below the plaque, in small Gothic letters, it reads, Sie sangen im Feuer. Und wurden nicht vergessen. *, they sang in the fire, and were not forgotten. *. Today, visitors to the crypt sometimes leave drawings, birds, angels, and once, a small folded note that read, * to Jacob. We hear your song. *. The story of the Dresden 12 is not part of official commemorations. It is too intimate, too tragic, too gray for a world still hungry for black and white morality. But their voices echo quietly in the stone below. Not in statues or ceremonies, but in hymns half-remembered, in soot-covered walls, and in the silence that follows fire. Some stories aren't erased by time. They burn themselves into stone, into silence, into dreams. The Dresden 12 were meant to disappear, but their ashes still whisper. Listen closely, and you might hear them singing. But once you hear their song, you can't unhear it.